I'm not the smartest guy in the room ever, that's for sure. I just am really aggressive in my approach. I'll just get after stuff. It's so easy to succeed anywhere you go, just based on work ethic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the RMG Agent Podcast. I'm your host, Reed Moore, and I'm here with another one of the Master Series, and I'm here with a true master of listing properties, somebody who's been in the industry for a long time, somebody who's taken punches, gotten back up, and as always, somebody that I think that the real estate community should be listening to. So I have the privilege today of being here with Mr. Cory Meyer.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, man.
Happy to be here.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I live in far northern California.
Okay.
A small area called Redding.
Yep.
I live just outside of that, and I've been in business as an agent for 18 years, a little over 18 years now. And I got started in the business doing flips when I was 19 and learned my way through the high market. And once that market crashed, that's when I decided it was time to get my license. So I stepped in about maybe the hardest time in the history of real estate to start.
Yeah.
And I moved to a brand new area where I knew zero people to do that.
Okay. All right. So there's a lot to unpack there. So I always like to start this by just asking the question, why should somebody listen to you?
Well, experience, good and bad experiences. I've failed a lot. I've won a lot. And just kept pressing forward, failing forward. And so I think I've got a lot of knowledge in the real estate sales arena to help a lot of people out that want help. Yeah.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about launching your business during the crash in a location that you didn't know anybody. I'll talk to real estate agents from time to time, and they're wanting to relocate. And I always tell them, starting over in a new location is going to be 100 times harder than you expect it to be. Right? Be prepared. What did you do?
Well, my first broker, true story, and this will date me, handed me a paper phone book, the yellow pages, and he said, call out of this phone book, just go down the pages and call expired listings.
Okay.
And I said, what's an expired listing?
Uh-huh.
And so I did just that. Started just hammering the phones. At the time, fortunately, there was even in a small town, Redding at the time was 100,000 people. So not really a small town, but a small area, and there's nothing that attaches to Redding. So even in that time, there was still like 35 expireds a day coming on.
No kidding.
So I just look them up and call them and then hammer the phone book. And soon enough, I'm a loud guy. So soon enough, they had to find a spot to put me. That wasn't in the general, we had a bullpen in the lobby. And they realized real quick with me hammering the phones, they needed to get me somewhere else. Yeah. So they put me in the way back, and I just started calling. And shortly after that, people were beating their chests coming out of 2005. And, they thought they were a big deal doing 26 deals a year. And it was just so easy. And they started to fall apart. And shortly after that, I go, what's this guy doing? Mm-hmm. Because at the time he was doing, I don't know what it was, maybe 70 to 100 deals, which was a big deal in our market at the time. And I found out he was coached by Mike Ferry, so I borrowed $12,000 to pay for the year of Mike Ferry coaching.
Okay, so how do you do that? Were you flush with cash?
Oh, I was dead broke.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a pattern here, because this is something that you hear over and over. So how do you go from being dead broke to betting on yourself with $12,000, which when you're broke, that is a huge amount of money.
Yeah. Well, I made a lot of money, but I was from 19 to 25, you don't exactly make wise choices with it.
Yeah.
So by the time it crashed, the market crashed on my last flip in Sonoma Valley, where I'm from, where I grew up. And so I lost $40,000 on that deal. And then, again, moved to Redding with my girlfriend at the time, now wife. Mm-hmm. She's my high school sweetheart. And so we just In California, it was so cheap to move up there compared to Sonoma. It was $700,000 for an outhouse at the time in Sonoma. In Redding, I heard you could buy a house for 200 and something thousand bucks, and I thought, no way in California. So we went up there with no money. Of course, the time was I walked into a bank, told them I owned a construction company, and they just give you money at that point in time in history, right? So, just knowing that I was starting a new life out, I didn't have any options. I didn't finish college and really had nothing to do. I didn't know anything but construction, and which the construction business had kind of stopped.
Sure.
And knowing enough about real estate from doing so many offers and contracts with the agents that worked for me on flips and stuff. And I didn't do a lot of them at the time. We'd just live in them while we flipped them. Then I would buy the ones the flippers wouldn't buy. Okay. Because I was young and dumb and just do everything there for 6 months and go to the next one. But knowing that I needed to do something to make money, and so I got licensed and just, that was really my only option at the time. It was the only thing I really knew to do.
Yeah. So you walk in a new area and lots of expireds, lots of chaos in the industry. Who told you just to bang out the phone? Like, how did you come to that conclusion?
My broker.
Okay.
I mean, he was just an old guy, grumpy old broker. And, I get my license and he finally goes, basically, get out of my hair, go figure it out or something. And I'm like, well, what'd I do? And I remember we're sitting in the lobby of the office, and that's when he gave me the phone book and told me to call expired. So, I mean, I'm just I'm not the smartest guy in the room ever, that's for sure. I just am really aggressive in my approach. I'll just get after stuff. So I just did it.
Yeah.
Started making contacts, and then, when I hired Mike Ferry, obviously they gave me a system and a structure, and I started going to the script classes live. Back then they were live, and we had to do the hand motions with our wording and all the stuff. And I just got really into it because I've always been a sales guy. Mm-hmm. So that's it. I mean, it's so easy to succeed anywhere you go just based on work ethic. If you have the work ethic, everyone else is lazy. So especially at the time I started, they were real lazy and very complacent.
Sure.
Coming out of that market, right? They had 3 years where you literally had to sit in the lobby and do floor time, and people would walk in and buy a house all day.
Yeah.
So, and that's funny because we think now that's back before Zillow and everything, right?
Sure, yeah.
2006. And so that stuff, internet started going. So, and the market crashed, so walk-ins weren't a thing. Mm-hmm. So it was really all I had to do. But then Mike Ferry, right, his system and learning how to track my calls every day, my contacts, boil it down to the dollar amount I knew I wanted to make, right? And then back that up to, dollars or from closed deals to pendings to showing, appointments set to contacts made and all that stuff, and learning how to track all that.
So one of the models that we teach and we've taught on the podcast is mindset, effort, skill set, by the way, in that order. And so one of the things I heard you do is you just started calling people. You didn't go wait to figure out the system. You flat out just started doing something, right?
Right.
Tell me more about that.
I'm definitely a ready, fire, aim guy.
Okay.
So,
yeah,
that's just what I did. So you asked about what did I do?
Yeah.
The system? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's back when we used desk phones. I just sat there and go down the phone book, and before I knew it, it's funny, like people think it's crazy. At one point in time, I got to the point where I would have 2 desk phones, mm-hmm. and I would dial one number on the other and dial one number on the other, and I would just pick it up and see who'd pick up first. Now everything's automated.
Yeah.
But, like one day I did 500 dials with two desktop phones.
Wow.
And so just getting through it, and then, you get comfortable with the calls, because I was, as we all know, every no leads to the next yes.
Yeah.
And so it's just purely a numbers game, and that makes sense to me.
So you're working in town, you're just banging out the phones, and tell me about the larger team.
Well, everyone was small back then. I mean, like I said, I think he was the biggest guy in our market, and he was doing 75 to 100 deals at the time. It's so critical if you find someone to follow.
Yeah.
And actually, I stole this from Ben Kenny years ago, but rip off and duplicate. Before I knew that term, that's really all I started doing.
Yeah.
Was just copying. Success leaves clues, right? We all know that term. So I just started copying what he was doing, hired the same coach, did all the things, and everybody was in the dumps at the time. I mean,
yeah.
It was a depressing time to be in real estate or any form of business, right? Everything was going to heck. So yeah, that's all I did, and from there it grew, and I bounced around to a few offices, and then finally I found another coach that was really inspiring to me, and he became just a very good friend and kind of a mentor in life and everything. You probably know him. His name was Rick Jiha.
Yeah.
And so Rick and I got really close, and he would coach me. And then he got me over to Keller Williams, where then I was in an ecosystem with a lot of training.
Yeah.
And, MAPS coaching, a lot of those people all came from Mike Ferry. So they had a lot of the same concepts and were following the same things. And so it worked well for me. And that's where my career started to really blossom. But I've always liked working with people. I started a team basically in 6 to 8 months or so. Mm-hmm. First partnered up with a guy in the office. Then I grabbed another agent in the office. She became my assistant. And then, things just started happening. His wife would pull my expireds, canceled lists, and he was kind of the sort of like a lead admin type guy.
Sure.
And then I was the lead sales guy. And then obviously that didn't work out too long because I was really hustling.
Yeah.
And growing. And
well, it sounds like it's interesting because it sounds like you did a lot of really smart things. Sometimes we stumble into smart things and we look back, and it's like you look back and you can write a book, but in the moment you're just trying to figure out the next logical thing. So you start out with just pure effort, and there's a lot of limiting beliefs and a lot of I can't tell you how many agents I've run across, and they are looking for the perfect widget or the perfect system where you were just here's the phone book, just start calling.
Yeah.
Right. And then you found the system that took a previously existing work ethic, magnified it. Mm-hmm. Right. And then now it magnifies. So now results magnify. And then you start doing things administratively, right? Which is to have somebody pull your expireds and your for sale by owner lists and things like that. So now you're magnifying your business through this structure. You start hiring and bringing people on. What did you find out about the challenges that other agents faced that didn't quite do what you did?
Like Mike Ferry told me, or said it to everybody, but I grabbed it from him once, and I really latched onto it. It just made sense. He said, the more rejection you receive on a regular basis, the more money you'll make. Mm-hmm. And that just stuck with me.
So how does somebody who gets into real estate because they love HGTV get their mind around what you just said? Because fundamentally, that is the business of real estate. Even inside of your network, somebody's going to be nicer about rejection, but they're not really rejecting you. They're rejecting your services at that point in time or your skill set at that point in time. How do you help another agent get their head around the fact that real estate success is hard work?
I'm still trying to get people to get their head around it today, but it's not just real estate, it's any business, right? Everybody I know who's super successful, they outwork everybody in their field. That's it, right? And that's what brings them to the place they're at. Of course, there's super ultra smart people that get that way, but it just comes down to choices we make, right? If you want to win, you have to make the choice to do the things and create the daily habits every day that are going to cause you to win.
Yeah.
And then if you repeat them over and over and over again, you can't be successful. Like, you can't not be successful. So it's like, I've built a structure, like I know for a fact that I don't care how good you are or how much skill you have, if you do 3 hours a day prospecting, you will make a lot of money and be successful. You will fall into business. And so that's trying to get them to understand that and do that every day is super hard. But I was willing to do it. Mm-hmm. And then you also, the HGTV lovers and how fun it is to show homes. They fail to recognize that client acquisition is the key to this business, period, right? If you don't get the clients, you can't, you could be the best showing person, you could doll up a house, you could do all those things. Your business will never reach a high level if you don't get more clients on a regular basis. Another guy that changed my world, I don't think he knows it, because I don't really know him, is Keith Riddle.
Yeah.
Right? So I was at a Keller Williams event, and it was like 2011 or 12, whenever Boomtown just came out, and I think he was speaking, I can't remember, he was on a panel, and I went up to him after, and I said, where do you get all these leads or something? And he said, Boomtown. So there again, it was scary, but I just signed up right away, and it was crazy back then, right? You could put $1,000, $2,000 a month into marketing and just get a ton of leads with real information and everything. Yeah. So that really launched me into building a massive database now that I could pull from, that were people actually inquiring. And then the rejection thing, when I call people, like, nobody gets really mad unless they're just flat out a jerk. If you approach the call correctly, it's hard for them to get mad, or they're just someone you don't want to work with anyways.
Sure.
So I just decided to give up on any fear for that. Expireds, getting into that is definitely probably the most. It's a you get a little nerves going. Mm-hmm. It's a total cold call. They're disgruntled. They didn't sell their house, so I had to work through that a bit. But other than that, once you realize and make enough calls, like, nobody really gets mad. When people say that, I called a bunch of people today and they were all so angry and I got hung up on it, I'm like, well, you better change your approach. Because that doesn't happen to me.
Yeah. One of the things you said was anybody in any industry that's successful, they just outwork everybody. And it's interesting because sometimes, there's this almost this feeling of, I'm not going to go all in on real estate. I'm not truly going to commit. I'm not going to get out over my skis, because then if it doesn't work, I can go do something else. But they fail to realize everything else is going to be the same thing, which is you dealing with your fear, you building your skill set, you just putting in massive effort. That's the path.
Right. If you don't put the effort in, even if you go get a job somewhere, you're just going to be a low-level employee.
Yeah.
The guys that's, build their way up in any business, even if they don't own it, they're the hardest workers in the room.
Yeah.
Right? And they don't give up, and they don't shy away from the hard stuff.
Yeah.
And then, the biggest thing too other people do is once they hit a little bit of failure, they just stop, and they just crumble. So you've got to be resilient. You got to fight through that and just get back up and go after more.
So how have you done that, right? So let's just pretend that ever since you made peace with lead generation real estate, it hasn't been roses and just fairy tales and unicorns, but you've actually fallen on your face and you've actually had some hard times, which is why we do this master series. Is you've done if you've done this for 18 years, you've skinned your knees a few times. Mm-hmm. How have you pulled yourself back up when things didn't go right? Well,
you don't have the option. What are you going to do?
So there is an option, but how have you quit? So how have you decided over and over again to not quit?
There's the relentless pursuit of winning. I'm very competitive, right? That's just like my back, I grew up playing football and, I didn't always win every play, but I still wanted to hit you harder than everybody on the field possibly could. And so even if I get knocked down, same thing with business. I'm going to get up and try and hit you again.
Yeah.
Harder, right? So you got to just keep doing that in business over and over. And it is tough. I've been through some really tough times in this business, but it's always worked out, right? Mm-hmm. The worst scenarios. That's why, I answer the question, why can I teach people or whatever? It's because I've literally failed at pretty much everything in this business, and I've also won at pretty much everything in this business. And it happens over and over again.
Yeah.
So it's not till you learn the most from your failures.
Yeah.
So I love, again, some of these quotes I just love, and they're, things everyone knows, but if you can adapt the mindset, like sometimes you win, sometimes you learn, then it's always really a win, right? It's not actually failure, because you just learn from that mistake. Now, if you don't learn, then you got a problem. But and I'm not the I've got a pretty hard head too.
So if somebody's newer to this industry, what's the advice that you give to them?
Prospect every day.
Okay.
I mean, number one, find a way, find a lead source, jump on a team, right? A team like yours or mine that has tens and tens of thousands of leads in the database, and find a way to leverage others. Actually one of the ways I started marketing a lot when I was early on in the business is the foreclosure market. Well, all the foreclosure people, this is a prime example, right? We don't have foreclosures now, right? But you might be in an office, and you don't even have to jump on a team, but you might be in an office where there's 25 agents that have listings. Mm-hmm. Most of those agents don't work hard. Right, this is one of the easiest industries to outwork everyone in the room.
All right, so you keep saying that, and it's true. It's hard to hear, and it's hard to say. Maybe not as hard to say, but it's true. What the person who's listening to this podcast, ultimately, my hallucination is they don't want to be a lazy agent. But if they are a lazy agent, like what does a lazy agent look like? So maybe they can self-identify.
I mean, they just avoid the work, avoid the hard things. How early do you get up? What time do you get into the office? Mm-hmm. Are you completely prepped to make your phone calls without distractions, right? Prospecting is not picking up and calling your current escrow, calling your current listing client, going through email, checking in on an escrow, right? All these things that people do in their prospecting time, and they end up making 20 calls, right? Like if you make 20 contacts every day to new potential customers and ask for business, or it could be a follow-up call to someone that you haven't won the business yet, you're gonna be massively successful. 95% of the industry avoids that for some reason because they have this thing, and it's so funny when people say, I'm not a cold caller. Okay, it doesn't matter how you talk to those contacts. If you love writing handwritten notes, bring it to them in person. If you like delivering flowers, go do that. Deliver donuts to a shop. Like, it doesn't matter as long as you make the contacts every day, but everybody wants to take prospecting and say, it's cold calling. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But it's all of the things that cause you to talk to new people and tell them you're in real estate and ask them if they know anybody looking to buy or sell real estate that you might be able to help this year. And people avoid that like the plague.
It's interesting because cold calling is kind of this avatar. If I can say I don't like cold calling, then I can secretly hide everything that is effort for lead generation under that thing and feel good about myself.
Oh yeah.
Right? Which turns out that means you're out of business.
And by the way, I don't want everyone to think that's all I do. I just moved to a small market, and I chose, you don't pick a niche there. You just do everything.
Yeah.
So yes, we still focus on past clients and sphere of influence, right? Referrals is a massive piece of my business, right? How did I get the referrals? Well, I earned someone's business in the first place by prospecting, likely.
Yeah. Because
I moved to a market where I didn't know a soul, right? And I left. I always joke, it was really smart. I got into real estate after leaving one of the highest priced markets in the country and knowing pretty much everyone in town to move to one of the lowest priced markets in California where I knew nobody. But it's what happened, and I'm so thankful that happened. Now looking back, right? And that's part of the reason when this market we're in right now is just normal to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easier than it was back then, but anybody who's been in the business 13 years or less right now is going, what the heck, this is terrible. Well, they've only been in an up market.
Right.
But then, like I said earlier too, I didn't finish, but leveraging other agents in the office for open houses, for marketing their listings, because likely they're not marketing.
Right.
Right. So posting their stuff on social media, sending out their listings in email, doing open houses at their listings, and then you don't need to spend money, and you don't need to have a listing to get started, right? I I used to go, I don't know if I picked it up from Keller Williams or whoever, but I used to take someone's listing and then I would go there and it was the 10-10-20 rule, 10-20-10 rule. So I'd show up at a listing that they have that I'm going to do open house, and then I'd door knock 10 to the left and then go across the street, do 20 back and then 10 back to the house. And it was just simple, but I did a lot of door knocking as well.
Yeah.
And even so, like, I was dead broke and I had one client that I knew was working with another agent, but there was nothing for them to buy. And I was prospecting one day and I was like, wait a minute, you know what? That's a fat paycheck. He needs to spend $700,000 and he doesn't have a house to buy. So why am I sitting here at my house making calls? It was the afternoon, so I already hit my goals. So I decided to go door knock the specific homes I knew he would wanted, because he wanted a house over a river in this neighborhood. Well, there was only 20 homes or so that fit the criteria. I hit the 10th door and double-ended the deal.
That's awesome.
It cost me zero money to market. It was very simple. It's a warm approach. They're not ever mad, but those are the types of things that agents can do to become successful without any money, but they'll still avoid it.
Sure. Well, it sounds a lot like a job. And entrepreneurs are famous for this idea of like, I don't have a job or I don't want a job. And then if you look at successful entrepreneurs, they have kind of built their own rules for themselves, and they're typically not the best boss for themselves because they are just absolutely like,
right.
You know, like you just go, you do, right? Here's the plan. Here's when you wake up, which is like, that's what it sounds like you did.
Yep. You got to treat it that way, especially real estate agents. I can do what I want when I want. You are self-employed, right? You just have to hang your license under a broker. Other than that, it's the lowest cost business startup I'm aware of. The problem is more than 80% of them should not be running their own business, but they are.
Yeah.
So, you know, I do the same thing pretty much every day. Not every day. I've moved things around. Obviously, in my point in my career, I run a team and all that kind of stuff. So I've got a lot more to do than I did back then, but I'm actually in a lot of ways simplifying back to the old days, which is funny. You know, I know that I've got to be up at a certain time to get to the office at a certain time and to get on my calls at a certain time to not blow up my whole day. And that's one of the things Mike Ferry really taught me, you know, was having my schedule all blocked out, right? Time blocking. And I'm not perfect, right? I've screwed up on this stuff forever and I fail on a lot of days, but as long as you get back on track, and that is a job, right? You got to be like I guess, I don't know, I've just thought of this, but you got to kind of be the best employee of your company and show up every day and make stuff happen.
Yeah.
And do your job. So that is the problem sort of with the industry, is a lot of people just want to float.
Yeah. For the people who listen to the podcast, what I want them to hear from this is these are all choices. This isn't like, oh, sorry, you didn't graduate from MIT. Well, you're not going to, win.
Right.
That's not what it is. There's just this level of effort and consistency, and it's not even perfect consistency. It's the willingness to constantly fight for consistency. And if you're willing to do these things that are completely inside of your abilities, inside of your control, you can have a really big career and a really big life in this industry. Oh yeah. It's all about contacts. Any way you're going to do it, you got to keep building the contact list. And I teach all the agents this, your goal every day is to talk to Sally, who's going to buy in May of 2025, and George, who's going to buy in September of 2026, and Billy, who's going to buy hopefully in 2 or 3 months. Like, that's your goal every day, so that when you come up on that month, you have 50 Sallys that told you they may buy that month. Right. And so then you're consistent, and 3 or 4 of them drop every month. Right? That's where you want to be as an independent agent, right? Like, I always try to figure out how to get everybody to 36 transactions a year. And then they go more. I've got agents on my team that do, 190, 50, 60. It comes down to just doing it. Like, I had this guy, this is a good story in typical agents, right? He tried to stay, not listen to me for like 3 years. And he kind of floated around with this part-time sales job,
Then he finally went full time, but he wouldn't do the calls every day. He wouldn't do the steps that it takes to be successful coming every day. Finally, year 3, it's like something set in. He quit his job, his secondary job that was keeping him complacent, getting the money coming in. And he did exactly what I was telling him to do. And I didn't come up with this, by the way. I just listened to my coach. And the guy did 35 deals that year.
Wow.
And now he's done 50 plus ever since.
That's fantastic.
And he makes 250 dials every week without fail.
Amazing.
50 a day, and he makes, he's freaking 28 making 250,000 a year or whatever he makes. I don't know exactly, but and so now his life's fully developed and everything, and it wasn't until the point he finally said, I've got to do this. Like there's a bunch of different ways to skin the cat, but you got to make contacts and build your database. Yeah. That's the core of it all.
Yeah, and if you don't have a database, you're not going to find them unless you go out and reach out to people and build it.
Right.
And if you have a database and you don't talk to it, somebody else is going to start to encroach on that database.
Oh yeah. What Tom Ferry say, the average buyer now is in 11 people's databases, I think he said, and the average person knows up to 5 realtors somewhere, somehow. So it's like, if you're not on top of them, they might be making the calls and taking that business. And then what I've watched throughout my career is the people that get stuck on one thing, like referrals are the gold in this business. But if you focus on just that, I mean, when the tough market comes and a lot of your referrals aren't buying, then you've got nothing.
Right.
And so I've seen those guys do the highs and lows. And so I try to keep a really diverse, amount of lead sources that are coming in to make sure my pipeline's always full for my agents and for myself.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So this is a really appropriate interview rolling into 2025 because this is an opportunity for agents to take a look at the new year and say, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to treat this like a job? Am I going to roll up my sleeves? Am I going to deal with my fear? Am I going to build a big life here, or am I going to go somewhere else and continue to, live in whatever way I'm currently living? Because that's really the deal. It sounds like it's choices.
Oh yeah. We make a lot of money per transaction too, and then the other thing that gets them is they get complacent, close a deal. And then another huge piece of advice that I teach agents is you've got to get out of the busy work. Like the other thing I see where agents really fail is they get 2 to 3 escrows because they do finally make the calls, and then their whole world blows up.
Right.
And I call it the transaction roller coaster, and it's why they get stuck at 12 deals a year, even if they're a good agent, because they think that they're doing best by servicing their client by doing all the paperwork, all the disclosures, and if they leverage someone else, like I never wanted to do that stuff. So it was easy for me to get rid of it pretty quick. And I'm still shocked today when my team handles stuff and someone's like, gosh, you guys are amazing. And I'm like, that's awesome to hear, because I wasn't involved in that.
Right.
But they still constantly do that. And like the agent I was talking about, he got stuck in that too. But you've got to find a way to leverage all the other tasks that keep you in that 20% so you're only focused on dollar producing activities, right? Appointments, prospecting, and contract, purchase contracts and negotiating.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a big tip for people, is to figure out how to leverage the amount of outsourced TCs there are now, transaction coordinators. Like if you're doing any paperwork in a deal, you're wasting so much time and energy, right? They're $350 or for whatever, it might be $500 in your market. Like leverage those people. They're in the business to do that, and make sure you hold them accountable to doing all the things. And send them everything from writing contracts to listing documents, so you can go back and get the next client if you want to build this consistent business.
Yeah, I love it, man. So good. And just so it just kind of goes back to these fundamentals, right, over and over and over again. And I really appreciate you taking the time to share, man. You're a true master of the craft, my friend.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Awesome. All right, guys, as always, we're here to impact, empower, and encourage you in all things real estate, in your real estate career. Thank you for joining me and Cory here, and I hope that this is something you can take away and put into action, roll into this next year. Take care, everybody.